This is from the 42nd verse of the Tao. The Tao gave birth to one. One gave birth to two. Two gave birth to three. And three begat 10,000 things. The 10,000 things carry yin and embrace yang. They achieve harmony and combine these forces. People suffer at the thought of being without their parents, without food, or without worth. Yet this is the very way that kings and lords once described themselves. For one gains by losing, and one loses by gaining. Who said something similar to that? You gain by losing, you lose by gaining. There you go. Exactly right. So, Rumi said something similar. Would like to link together, and it's part of that drawing I have up there. What's that little blob? It's the collective soul blob, which we'll just call one. And that one begets ultimately 10,000 things, which is what the Tao was just saying there. And we spend so much time thinking in terms of losing our parents or not having food and all this physical stuff, and then that's when you lose the Tao, because if that's what you're worried about. Well, check out what Rumi says. Remember, that was the Tao from Taoism. This is Rumi, the Muslim poet. I've read this many times before, but I'm going to go a little deeper today. There's one thing that must never be forgotten. If you were to forget all else, but did not forget that, then you would have no reason to worry. But if you performed and remembered everything else, yet forgot that one thing, you would have done nothing whatsoever. It is just as if a king sent you to a country to carry out a specific task. You go and accomplish 100 other tasks, but do not perform that particular task. Then it is as though you have performed nothing at all. Everyone comes into this world for one particular task, and that is their purpose. If they do not perform it, they will have done nothing at all. All things are assigned a task. The heavens send rain and light for the herbs of the field to germinate and spring into life. The earth receives the seeds and bears fruit. It accepts and reveals 100,000 marvels, too numerous to tell, which is this again, right? There's one thing we're supposed to be doing, and that 100,000 marvels are produced. The mountains give forth mines of gold and silver. All these things, the heavens, the earth, the mountains do, yet they do not perform the one thing that we are to do. That particular task is performed by us. So we are given a task, and if you perform that task, all of your sinfulness and foolishness will be dissolved. And yet you say, look at all the work I accomplish, even if I don't perform that one task. And then Rumi says, you weren't created for those other tasks. Okay? You were created for one thing, not for all those other tasks. Rumi says, a poet once said, you are more precious than the heaven and the earth. What else can I say? You do not know your own worth. And then he says, still you offer another excuse, saying, but I apply myself to these lofty tasks. I study law, philosophy, logic, astronomy, medicine, and all the rest. Then he says, for whose sake but your own are you studying these? You were not created for those tasks. So what is it that we think we're doing? We come from the one. We get sent into this world of 10,000 things, like the Tao says, or 100,000 marvels, like Rumi is saying. We come into this world, and then we start playing with all these tasks and marvels. Look at this. There's some law to study. There's some philosophy to discuss. There's a building to build. There's some music to create. There's a book to write. All these thousands and thousands of tasks. A lawn to mow, a house to vacuum, a house not to vacuum. I could go on and on. All these things are the yin and the yang, going back and forth. And exactly none of them are what you're supposed to be doing. Isn't that interesting? And yet we get sidetracked by all that kind of stuff. And yet the Tao and Jesus both say, you gain from losing. Right? That's how you gain. So since we all come from this one, and we all get burst into all these different pieces, again, Kabbalah describes it as 600,000 souls that are shattered. And we are now broken into all these different pieces with all these different things to do. Channeling the one, connecting to that divine spirit within, through each one of these pieces, guess what happens when we do that? Humpty Dumpty gets put back together again, right? And its resonance and its energy, and the fact is we do attract each other's pieces into the right place of the puzzle if you channel the spirit. Your job is to not worry about the speck in your neighbor's eye, but to worry about the log in your own. Channel the spirit through you. Now, Bud, you said it perfectly well. Yeah, you can use all these things. God uses the world as his footstool. But heaven is the throne. So the flesh aspect, if we think the purpose is to do those tasks, we end up doing what the Tao says. We're now worrying about losing our parents. That's just an interesting thing for them to start off. We all go through that one way or another. We're fearful for that. But do you really lose your parents? So how do you use losing your parents to access spirit? Since you said you can use these things, right?
Now that they're souls and they're still here.
Now you just experienced death but didn't, right? And you can only do that by channeling once you have the spirit flowing through you. And now you have the awareness, wait a minute, did I lose my parents? No, I didn't really lose my parents, did I? Now do that with every one of these other 10,000 or 100,000 marvels. Whatever it is, you can apply it in everything that you do. Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of heaven, then all the rest will be added to you, right? Make everything that you do spiritual. Always apply the spirit in every moment. All you do is say yes or no, any more comes from evil. What verse? Matthew.
I'm not even going to try.
You know, Matthew 5:37.
Matthew 5:37.
There you go. All you do is say yes or no, any more comes from evil. Why? Because in each one of those individual moments, think of every moment of your life as one of those 100,000 marvels, okay? Or the 10,000 things that the Tao says. Every one of those moments is the Holy Spirit present in it. Are you present in the Holy Spirit? How are you going to go around with that? Remember, what's the true test of first-rate intelligence? F. Scott Fitzgerald. Two opposing views. And still retain the ability to function. So in other words, black and white are opposites, but it makes sense to you. I like to say, are you okay with both Republicans and Democrats at the same time? There's a challenge. Can you see how they work together? If you can see how they work together, then you've got first-rate intelligence. You're looking at it from a lucid point of view. But your job is to see how they work together, not argue about who's right or wrong. You're now separating into the 10,000 things. Unity is going, oh, everything works together just fine, right? And then that enables you to channel the spirit. Okay, so as a body, when you start to think of your body as a liver, you want it to be healthy, right? You want it to be functioning. And this actually gets you to understand that. Use the flesh to teach the spirit. Krishna says to use the self to master the self. Now, if you start to think of, instead of our bodies have a liver, if you move forward in your day that your soul has a liver called your body or the pain body, and now you have lucidity, because does this make sense? I'm going to look at all of you, and if anybody shakes their head, we have to go deeper. Okay. Your body is your soul's liver. How's that for a radical? That'd be a good name of a book. Okay, so when you think of it correctly, and you're walking around in the world and you're obsessed with the physical aspects of things, you did just make yourself your own liver, okay? But when you are walking around with higher awareness that there's this soul aspect of self and your body is just this little piece of it, now we're closer, now we've got lucidity. So what is the body supposed to be doing? How do you use the flesh to teach the spirit? How do you use the self to master the self? You're supposed to be absorbing other people's energy. Now, when you don't know this, it is like someone who's drinking excessively or abusing their liver or something like that, and then it gets sick. Well, the body gets sick too. Well, what are you supposed to be doing? Let's move through my three favorite concepts from Krishna. Dark inertia is the lowest level of energy. It's the bad ego, if you will. And so what happens if you're working on lucidity and somebody shoots bad energy at you? What do?
You digest it spiritually. And
process the toxins. So somebody give an example of how to process toxins from somebody who is a bad ego. If you, again, I keep doing this. Is this on film? Why am I doing this when I say bad?
Because there's
What is he doing? Why am I doing this?
Because there isn't such a thing as bad.
That's like a self-protective mechanism for me. I do that automatically because I know that I'm not thinking in terms of bad. I'm just trying to get the concept out. What we call bad isn't really bad. Don't call stuff evil. As soon as you call it evil, now you're going to be a little more affected by it. So when you see a bad person who's doing bad things and you absorb that energy, it's not what goes into you that defiles you, it comes out of you. How do you process their bad energy? Some examples of the conditioned mind. It's one of the first concepts I learned when Buddha said, we're all conditioned ignorantly, right? We're conditioned ignorantly. What does ignorant mean? What does gnosis mean? Knowledge. Well, it's ignorance then. Lack of knowledge, okay? So if we're conditioned ignorantly, what are some things that human beings are taught? That's ignorant.
That gays are bad.
That there's things that are bad.
Yeah.
Take it personally.
Yeah, there you go. Now that's a good functional one too, because we're taught that you need to get respect from other people. And if you don't, then you take it personally, and that hurts you somehow. That's something that we're taught, which is ignorant. Why would that be ignorant? First of all, you're not you. You know, you're not this thing. Am I messing with the mic? You're not the body. As Don Miguel Ruiz says in The Four Agreements, good book for this, by the way, right? Not to take things personally. The other person is projecting their own ignorance onto you when they're saying something critical of you anyway. Unless it's true, like when Jesus called Peter Satan, I can imagine it. Peter doesn't go, that hurt, Jesus. Why would you say that to me? You're in a cranky mood today. Because Jesus was accurate, and he said it to him, smack him around a little bit. If somebody says something to you that's true about what you're doing, what can you do spiritually? Thank you, right? Thank you for pointing that out. I need to work on that. Peter could sense the Spirit coming off of Jesus, right? And so it was love that he could feel. I've told you guys before in one of the Gnostic texts, the whole halftime speech that Jesus gives the disciples at one point, which I have memorized now, which is cool. I want to unleash it on somebody that doesn't know it's coming at some point. You hypocrites, you losers, you pretenders to truth, you falsifiers of knowledge, you sinners against the Spirit. How dare you be asleep when you should be awake? How dare you're still listening when you should be talking so that the kingdom of heaven might receive you? What's that mean? You hypocrites and losers. Jesus called them losers. Why would he call the disciples hypocrites and losers? Right. They were taking Spirit and they were applying it to the flesh. That makes them a hypocrite and a loser. Okay? And so, but when first time I read that, I got choked up. I'm like, Jesus is admonishing me. Isn't that great if Jesus is admonishing you? That's what you'd want. The best coach. So if somebody is saying something critical to you, your job is to perceive the Spirit in it. And if it's about them, that's why the mirror thing is so fun for me to think about as a therapist. Since I understand the mirror, especially when I do couple sessions, and you know what's happening between two people, there's a mirror between them. And one person is learning from the other one whether they know it or not. Until you understand that's what's happening, and once you understand that's what's happening, what does it say in Corinthians? We see in a mirror dimly.
Then face to face.
See, I gave you one I knew you could get. There you go. We see in a mirror dimly because we don't know we're getting a reflection of ourselves from the other person. That's what's happening. It's a dim mirror. And if you could see the mirror clearly, you'd say, that's me. But it's dim, and so you don't know that you're being taught by the other person, right? But then you see face-to-face, which is not face-to-face, it's face-to-face. Get it? Then you're like, I'm looking at the other person's soul. I understand. Because now you can see you're through the looking glass. You recognize that everything, all this stuff, is reflecting back to you your oneness. Whatever it is. Traffic jams reflect back your impatience, if that's what you are. Death reflects back to you your fear and your ignorance of what death is. The pain you feel in those situations is telling you what you are in that moment, right? The resentment you have towards someone else is reflecting back your ignorance of what's been happening to you. But it doesn't mean you wouldn't tell someone like Peter that Satan, get behind me. I mean, that wasn't Jesus being a jerk. That was Jesus seeing Peter clearly. I'd like to refer to the Gospel of Mary when Jesus says to Mary, blessings upon you for not wavering at the sight of me. See, Mary saw Jesus as Christ. Didn't see him dying. Didn't see on the cross the flesh dying. She saw the Spirit being alive, right? Blessings upon you for not wavering at the sight of me. And so if all we do is see each other as flesh, guess what? We're flinching all the time. Muhammad, I don't have these ones memorized, but close enough. I know that Muhammad and Krishna both say the same thing whenever we keep seeing the world and perceiving it as physical. That we fall into the swamp of delusion. And whenever that's what you're seeing in the other person, you're seeing the flesh aspect, now you're caught up in the 10,000 things. And that's not one, that's not unified, and you're going to keep going through a process until you're purified, right? Till you're crucified. That ego is going to be gone or completely tamed. And now you can do what Krishna says. When you perceive the oneness emanating from all things, you will attain the infinite spirit. What a cool little line that is. When you perceive the oneness that emanates from all things, you attain the infinite spirit. That is to say, oh, this experience, I am that. What I'm experiencing, I trust God completely. I need to be going through this. It's teaching me something. Now, when you're filled with spirit, you might be motivated to say, Satan, get behind me. I mean, you might do that. And you might do what Jesus did in his halftime speech, call people hypocrites and losers or whatever. But you're doing it out of love. And you can tell you're doing it out of love because it feels...
True.
That's a word. I was just opening up to the floor. Peaceful, true, loving, whatever. And now you just filtered the toxins, right? Somebody else's stuff projected onto you. You see it clearly, lucidly. You can forgive it and recognize that I'm not going to shake. I'm not going to flinch. I'm going to recognize that you're shooting something at me, and I'm going to bring it into myself. I'm going to stabilize it. Actually, I have a little thing I did in group the other day. Can all your relationships be harmonious? Can all your relationships be harmonious?
I know
On which level?
Yeah, you do know the answer.
Be quiet.
I think from a pretty high level.
From only one level can they all be harmonious.
Can we even reach that level here?
Good luck, Linda. You have to. Okay. Yeah, it's super hard, isn't it? But you guys already gave the answer. There is a certain level where it can all be harmonious. If you think in terms of Jesus again, was he in harmony with all the people? With all the people?
I would say so.
Absolutely. Even the ones that were killing him, he was harmonious with them. Were they harmonious with him?
No.
Was that his responsibility? Nope. He knew his job. I'm supposed to be harmonious with them, not the other way around. It's not my job to get people to like me and be harmonious with me. It's not. It's can I be resonant with them? So if you think of somebody that's easy in your life, it's easy to be harmonious with someone that you have a good time with, right? Does Jesus have a line about that? Yeah, just loving your friends, that ain't no reward.
It's not. It's easy.
Right.
Very
Now,
easy.
go be harmonious with your enemies. Like I'd like to say, if I ever ran a political, what are they called when they debate? The debates. If I ever did a debate, a presidential debate, I would go out and say, all right, Mr. Trump, Miss Clinton, I want you to take each other's point of view on every subject I'm going to talk about tonight, right? Argue from the other person's point of view. Go. Whoever could do it, I would vote for, right? But does anybody ever spend some time thinking about the other person's point of view? Of course, often not. They're so dug into the 10,000 marvels. So we are in this pattern of debating and arguing and thinking that we are other and separate. But what's really going on is the world is reflecting back to you exactly what you need to learn for your growth. And the more you do that, the more you bring the spirit into the moment. The more you're tapped into that spirit, the more you can see the unity in all things. And that reinforces the fact that the spirit's going to come back in you even more. Win-win scenario. This is why the human brain was set up to be an addiction organ, right? We go Kabbalah for a second. In our heart, we have all these different desires. We have how many?
600 and something.
Okay, you're good.
I don't know.
About 613. I have no clue. And where they come up with the numbers like that. Yeah, but you're good. But that means a lot. That's what it means. You have a lot of competing desires. Pick any one of them and focus on it a lot. You'll get addicted to it. Whatever it is. What did you say, Virgie? What we attend to?
Oh, we keep our attention focused on our intention.
Mm-hmm. And if your intention, let's just use a stereotypical example, is to feel no pain, so when you want to numb yourselves with drugs and alcohol. If that's your intention, I want to feel better now. Heck with dealing with all these feelings. What ends up happening? Your intention is to feel better now, and I want to make it go away. And so you're going to attend to something like drugs and alcohol, or food or sex, and all the things that people get addicted to. And guess what? That happens to you as a result. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believing you will receive. But what if your intention is to do it, quote unquote, naturally? What if your intention is to go, you mean that spirit stuff actually works? I'd like to come to know God. And then you attend to that. Guess what happens next? You get hooked on that. Same thing. Whatever you ask for in prayer, believing you will receive. And so then that starts to come to you. Along the way, as I've experienced very embarrassingly, you attend to something like the results of a football game, you make it super important to you, next thing you know, you're hating on Tom Brady. And again, it's exactly what happened to me. I tended to it so much, I put so much energy into it, that the guy drove me nuts for about 10 years. And then I realized I had a problem, so I had to go into Tom Brady rehab and wean myself off of hating the guy. It's totally true. But again, that's an example. If that's what you attend to, pick a political angle and attend to it. And then explain to yourself in your own mind why you think you're right. Argue it again and again inside your own mind, and then argue it with somebody else. And what you've just done is set up a huge barrier that you, by the way, have to walk back in order to get to the spirit again. Ha, karma. Right? And so whatever you attend to, you're going to get addicted to. So the 613 things, the Kabbalah in Judaism, actually, the mitzvot, are the corrections of those things. And we do have to correct those addictions that we have. Back to what you said in the beginning with the one of the things we do wrong, we're looking at respect. I need respect from you. That's conditioned ignorance. We have to walk that back. You actually have to get yourself to a place where I need no respect from anybody else. Where's the only source that makes us feel good anyway? What's the only source? Right, that's it. If I want to say I need respect from someone or something, I would say only from God. That's the only thing that's lasting and permanent. And guess what? He already gave it to you 100%. And the only thing that you're doing is thinking that he doesn't respect me because all these silly behaviors over here. That's what grace is. God respects you 100%. You're already good to go. The rest of it is just Mayan culture. Million voices in our head. The fact is, from a lucid point of view, not only do you know your intention, you also recognize where everybody else is in their progress or their development or their awareness, and you can go to their level. Again, use the flesh to teach the spirit. If you're telling someone they're beautiful, here's Rumi. After he said, you're here to do one thing. You've got one task. That's what you're created for, okay? To experience the infinite spirit within this little fake body of yours, okay? To have as Kabbalah says, to have an experience of bestowal as God bestows upon you. That's what we're here to do. To be filled with delight. That's what we're here to do. That one thing. And delight does mean the light, okay? Well, part of that is being able to recognize that, well, what are other people doing and how can I help them experience the light and all that kind of stuff. But if you're doing it for any other reason, here's how Rumi says it when he says, you were here to do one thing, but you give yourself an excuse. I'm applying myself to all these lofty tasks, studying law, philosophy, logic, astronomy, medicine, and all the rest. Well, for whose sake are you doing that but your own? Now, this is how Kabbalah says it. In almost every case, what looks like outer giving is really inner taking. Outer giving is really inner taking. We want to feel good as people. And so we're good people to other people so people can say, hey, you're a good person, and that makes you feel good. That was selfish. It's really a 180 because you end up wanting the other person to have it as much as you do. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. It's a team thing. We're unified. We're all in this together until we all get out. Krishna says, I appear again in age after age. Enlightened beings are coming back again and again to wake the rest of us up, right? And so the goal is, I want you to have it every bit as much as I have it, and vice versa. So we work together as a team. And if that's behind your beautiful words, awesome. Page one, Course in Miracles, all we can do is help each other remove the barriers to the awareness of love's presence, okay? Nobody can teach another what the meaning of love is. Nobody can tell each other what God is, okay? Page 1 of the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. If I were capable of explaining God to you, it's not God. However, we can help each other remove the barriers, right? And that is all we're doing. In Hinduism, it's called siddhi. Siddhi, that's the perfection is already in you, and all we're doing is peeling back the layers of the onion, right? We must deconstruct the ego. And if you peel it back, the perfection that's in you is revealed. David, Michelangelo's David is a perfect example. Beautiful, beautiful marble statue. And how did it get created? Chipped away all the excess, right? We are the perfection already. We're there. And all we're doing is helping each other chip away these barriers that we have, ego barriers. We're chipping them away by doing things like being forgiving instead of resenting, and being patient instead of being impatient, being wise instead of ignorant. That. And each one of those is a chip that reveals the perfection that's inside of you. And that is what's being called to be born again. That's being born again. Once that's fully revealed, it's also the resurrection. That's, again, Hinduism parroting Christianity, and back and forth. It's the same concept. We are all working on this from within.